Hello, welcome to the Rise Up with Margarita show, and I'm Margarita. And every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, I do a live show to really give you some training, some tools to help you rise up as a light worker who is ready to graduate from light worker to new earth leader. And so today's topic is the number one mistake light worker women make when it comes to creating their wealth. And so this is a super important topic, and I just really wanted to speak into this because I notice it, and this used to be an issue for me back in the day when I first started with my private practice. Some of you may know that I have a private practice here in New York City as a licensed acupuncturist, a Reiki master teacher. Sometimes I also move in some of the shamanic elements that I do as well. That tends to be more virtually for my clients. But that said, I started off with a private practice, right, in the middle of New York City. And there were a lot of things that I got to move through and work on in order to really open up into my abundance because for sure, like in the beginning was a struggle for me. I don't think that's the case anymore. But the reality is that there were certain things that I got to shift and ground into in order to make those big changes happen. But this one thing that I'm going to share with you today is going to be like a game changer. And for all I know, maybe it's something you're familiar with already, but wherever it is at for you, just know that this is exactly coming through for you. And because, I don't need to tell you that the energies are really intense right now, not only on the planet, but we are streaming a lot of cosmic, solar frequencies and plasma waves that are here to upgrade us on a cellular level. And I know that there was a full moon lunar eclipse last night as well, and there's just a lot of downloads coming in. So good to see you all here. Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Ida. Good to see everyone here. And so, yes, so today's topic is the number one mistake light worker women make when it comes to creating their wealth. And this was just, as I mentioned earlier, just super important because I tend to notice that light worker men don't really have this issue. Usually it's the women. And so, I need to really share this with you so that you can shift that. You get to embrace your wealth. And this is usually the number one thing that will block light worker women from being in their wealth and creating it. So first of all, why light worker women are being invited to embrace their wealth now, like right now. I'm going to share that with you. Then I'll share the number one light worker mistake women make when it comes to creating their wealth, as well as how to transform that so that you can be in your abundant wealth and as a result, greater impact. So the reason why light worker women are being invited to embrace their wealth right now, there's a transfer of wealth from the dark to the light. And I know most light workers don't believe me. They're like, capitalist patriarchy, like all that old paradigm stuff. That's all crumbling, folks. Okay. So if anyone pops in with like down with the capitalist patriarchy, it's like it's dying already. Okay. We don't need to do anything. It's just like falling apart on its own. That said, the transfer of wealth is going from the darkness to the light workers. And what I mean by that is that those who actually do step up as light workers and really claim their wealth, because it is something that you get to claim. It's not something like you just put out into the ether and put it on your mood board and hopefully one day you'll have like $1,000 tomorrow, or whatever, right? There's a way to approach this, and it all begins on the energetic level. Because if you are not right within, it's going to show up in the physical realm, right? So for instance, if you don't, for instance, believe that the wealth is here for the light workers, then you will probably not go and claim that for yourself, right? Because if that's the belief, then usually the actions will follow suit to whatever the belief is, right? So that's one of the number one things I want to mention to you is that there is a transfer of wealth from the darkness to the light. All light workers who step up their game now receive and create their wealth, granting that they're actually doing that action for that, right? Because it doesn't just like plop out of the sky just randomly. It's because you actually put certain things into place, right? So that's number one. And then also, light workers who embrace their wealth will be the ones to circulate the new light into the economy to create a new system. So for all the light workers who are like complaining about like, oh, all these people over here are the ones who have access to money, it's like, you've got access to money. Like, no one is exempt to possibly having access to money. Like, we all have the same amount of access to money. Whether or not we believe that is another story, but that's the point here, right? Is that if you allow yourself to realize that part of the light worker power is that you transmute not only darkness to light for your clients or for yourself, but also for everything else, right? Because that's what really being in your power is all about, is like it gets applied to everything in your life. So like your relationships, you're actually boosting the economy. Like, what do you think happens when someone, let's say a client, pays you and then you receive that payment, right? And then that money is getting circulated to you, and then let's say you use some of that to pay like some bills or something, then guess what happens? You're circulating that light encoded, because now it's light encoded because it's come into your hands and you are encoded in light. And then when that money gets received on your end, that too gets encoded in light. And then when you pay a bill, you're circulating light out into the economy, right? So this is about really having an understanding that this is not just like, oh, maybe someday I'll get some like paper cash from the government or whatever. It's like, that's not the approach, right? You're a light worker. You get to see things beyond the physical, right? So, so that's number two. You get to understand that we are the ones creating the wealth and circulating light into the new economy. And then, now that you know that the patriarchal form that is now crumbling in the 3D around us is happening, it's making way for a more feminine way of creating wealth, which takes a shift in consciousness from overt masculine to embracing the feminine wealth. And what I mean by that, like, because I just want to kind of clear it out right here now, because there are some light workers who actually believe that being in the feminine way of creating wealth means you just like lay on a couch passively and just wait for like the male person to come by and be like, here's your like $10 million check, and it's like, that's not the feminine way of creating wealth. The feminine way of creating wealth means you are trusting your intuition 100%, no question, done, right? You're opening up into the flow, into the ease. You're trusting your intuition, you're trusting the mystery, you're trusting what you don't know, right? And like, if there's one thing that I know with a lot of light workers is that they're like, where's the money? Where's the evidence, right? It's like, why do you think you're called a light worker? Because you actually see beyond that. You don't need evidence, right? Like, that's how you create the evidence, is you actually just step forward in the flow with alignment and into opening. That's also an aspect of the divine feminine. And, you're just like opening into, oh, this could just happen now, right? Like, or maybe I'll try this. Oh yeah, and then that worked, right? Like all of a sudden I just got a tremendous amount of income just opening into the possibility of that, right? Like, that is the aspect of feminine creation of wealth. And another big thing about the creation of wealth that I would say is the number one mistake light worker women make when it comes to creating their wealth, because a lot of us, myself included, were conditioned, I'll say, to, crush it, make it happen, like all this like aggressive stuff. And like, I get it. I was in corporate also. I was like the only woman in like my entire department was like male. I'd smoke cigars with them and stuff like that, like back in the day, right? Like, it's just, I get it, right? Like, there's an overt masculine way, but that is the old way. And the new way is to open into the feminine, which does not mean passive. It does not mean passive. There is a certain power and strength that when you're in the feminine flow, truly, you are actually opening up pathways and portals for wealth to stream in and come in. Does that make sense? Like, I mean, go ahead and do like a raise your hand emoticon if that makes sense to you. And if it doesn't, that's also fine. Because I'll be speaking into all this anyway, and at the end I'll be answering any questions about this topic. And if you're just joining us, the topic today is the number one mistake Lightworker women make when it comes to creating their wealth. So I shared with you why Lightworker women are being invited to embrace their wealth right now and gave you all those steps, right? But here's the number one mistake that Lightworker women make when it comes to their money. They don't allow themselves to receive. They don't allow themselves to receive. And thank you for all the raised hands to confirm that this is like, you're feeling this, you're getting it, right? Like it's landing for you, right? But that's the number one mistake Lightworker women make. And before you're like, no, I allow myself to receive, right? Like, I mean, are you allowing yourself to receive to the point that it triggers you? Like it should trigger you to receive so much. Like I'll give you a real quick story. The first time I started expanding more into receiving, like, I mean, because it's one thing to like understand that you get to receive and then to start doing that, right? But then when you start up leveling the way you receive, like it makes you feel like you're actually a little lazy. For those of us light workers who love to do, who love to take action, who love to apply, you will feel lazy when you allow yourself to receive, because you're like, couldn't I be doing something more? What else could I do? What else could I do? Right? Like that was me. And because I'm always like into taking action, it excites me, right? And part of being in your feminine wealth and creation energy is to allow yourself to receive. And here is the thing, is that wherever you are not allowing yourself to receive, you are not allowing yourself to receive money. Especially if you are not allowing yourself to receive love in anywhere in your life and in your heart. If you're still carrying bitterness and you're still withholding your love, or there's something about love that you're not allowing yourself to receive or to even give, because I mean, you know, there's a give and take, right? But if you don't allow yourself to receive love, guaranteed, you will also not be allowing yourself to receive money. Guaranteed. And so if you notice, like, for instance, if you end up struggling with paying the bills kind of thing, it's like, instead of looking like, okay, like, of course, yeah, look into what you can do to bring in cash flow, right? But you get to look into, okay, where am I not allowing myself to receive love? Hey, Alfie, good to see you. Yeah, like, I mean, she was just saying, whoa, yeah, because look there. Instead of like, oh, look at that person who just took my money, or, you know, whatever the story might be, right? Because we make an emotional story about it when we're not yet in our power creating money. But look first into what you are withholding within your heart. What are you not allowing yourself to receive? Where are you not allowing yourself to receive love, to receive support, to receive care? Like those are the warning signs, those are the red flags that are telling you, hey, look over here, this is why you're not making money. Like, look over here, right? That's what you're gonna get. And then here's the thing, and this is something that I work with my clients with also, is that because they look into that and then they make the shift and then all of a sudden they make some money, you know, out of nowhere. But we all know where that came from. It came from their shift in their consciousness. It came from that energy field that they themselves shifted and opened up that portal so that they could receive money, because they allowed themselves to receive love. And that also goes to support, right? Are you allowing yourself to receive support? Are you like, no, I'll just do everything by myself. I'm a lone wolf. I'm good. Because that was me too. And here's the thing, that was a pain in the ass. Let me just save you, let's just give you the spoiler alert. It's a pain in the ass. I would not recommend, right? Like, I highly recommend allowing yourself to receive love. So, like, for instance, whether it's romantically or from in a platonic way, let yourself receive love, you know? And I'm getting some good questions here, but just to remind you, I'm going to be answering questions towards the end. So hold on to that. But I just wanted to lay that on you right now, is that wherever you don't allow yourself to receive love or even support, um, it's also where you're not allowing yourself to receive money. So you're actually, when you block yourself from love, you're also, excuse me, you're also blocking yourself from money. So that's super, super important. Yeah, Viking Girl Design says, yes, it's very hard to do it all on your own. Absolutely. Would not recommend. So anyway, so here's how to transform that, right? If you're noticing, oh, okay, that might be me who's not really receiving, right? So I'm going to share with you how to transform that so you can be in your abundant wealth and as a result, greater impact. Because sometimes people are like, oh yeah, I want to make a lot of money, but why? Right? Like, yeah, that might be great and whatever, but what is your why? Right? And it shouldn't be just so I can pay my bills, because your dreams have more than that. At least I hope so, right? So it should probably sound more to the effect of, you know, and I'll just give an example. When you're a light worker, it's not so much because you're this greedy person, right? That's like such a concern for a lot of light workers, is like, oh my God, I don't want to be greedy or that kind of thing. But the reality is that the universe is abundant. There's no such thing as that. It really more is, where's your intention? Why do you want to make that money, right? And the reality is, with light workers, it's usually because it will help them make more of an impact. It just does. If you're a broke ass light worker, you're going to have a hard time creating your impact, because you're going to have a hard time providing your offers, because maybe you don't have the platforms to create those offers, right? Because you can't pay for them. Or, or maybe a lot of light workers I know are, coupled up, or they have a family, they have children, and sometimes they just want to have freedom to be with their kids, and that's why they want to be abundant, so that they can like show up and serve, but also spend more of their time with their children or their family or whatever. Like, what is important to you? And the reality is that that wealth that you create will grant you freedom with whatever it is that is your why as a light worker, right? So, first of all, transform wherever you are not allowing yourself to receive all forms of love in your heart, and heal that. And I'm just going to say that again. Transform wherever you are not allowing yourself to receive love in all forms in your heart, and heal that. So I mean, and it's kind of a clear sign, for instance, when I sometimes talk with light workers who are curious about working with me, and then I ask them some questions about being connected with their heart, and they don't know, that's a clear indication that they're not really connected with their heart, usually. Like, if they don't even know what their heart is telling them, they don't know what their heart is saying, they're not connected with their heart, they don't know how they're feeling at the heart level. Like, those are indications that you are not connected with your heart. And if you're also not connected with your purpose, you're also probably not connected with your heart, because the reality is that your light worker purpose, that transformation, that specific transformation that you're here to provide in the world, not healer, not helping people, because all light workers do that, right? I'm talking about your specific transformation you provide in the world. And if you don't know what that is, you are probably not connected with your heart, because it is there, guaranteed. And you just probably have some fear around that, right? Around exploring that, around embracing it. And that's really what that is. It's not that you're truly disconnected. So when you are holding anything in your heart that is not connected to love, like maybe you're having bitterness from a past relationship, or maybe, there's someone who betrayed you, or maybe someone hurt your feelings, whatever the case may be, something happened that made you shut down your heart. And when you shut down your heart, that then just creates a cascade, because then you're not connected on any level to what you're here to create in the world. You're just like kind of fumbling around in your life, right? Really. And but when you're connected with your heart, you're then also connected with your purpose, and you know what your heart is telling you. So this is super important to understand that. And when I say heal that, I'm not going to go into all the steps of what that looks like because this is not that type of live. But what I will say is that you can do energy work. You can go to therapy, right? If it's something that is really like, huge and maybe connected to trauma, for instance, right? Um, but energy work is super, super powerful for that, especially if you're not quite sure why. So that is the first step you want to take. Secondly, shift your outdated money beliefs that are holding you back from receiving wealth. And that's super, super important because you can have the best strategy in the world. I mean, I teach that too with my clients. I teach you how to, create opt-in gifts. I teach you how to show up more visibly on social media and make that in a more effective way so you can connect with your ideal clients and all that juiciness, right? And how to create funnels and all of that, right? But it doesn't matter how great your strategy is if you keep blocking yourself from receiving your wealth. So since today's topic is the number one mistake lightworker women make when it comes to creating their wealth, keep that in mind, that if you feel you're pulling all the stops, like maybe you've done certain strategies and why are they not working, likely you're not aligned. Likely you've got a lot of outdated money stories or outdated beliefs about yourself that are blocking you from connecting with your ideal clients, blocking you from money, blocking you from receiving money, right? And so some of examples of outdated money beliefs are, and this is something I think we covered, last week even, some of the outdated money stories that are affecting light workers the most. And one of them is like, money is evil, right? Money is not evil. Money is neutral. And I spoke into this more deeply in last week's live, but that is an example of an outdated money belief. Another one is, it's not spiritual to have money or to make money or to create money, right? More bullshit. That's not true. It really depends on who you are. Money doesn't make you evil. Money doesn't make you a bad person. Money just is neutral. And then, it depends what type of person you are. You can be a person who's negatively oriented, who makes a lot of money, or you can be a person who's positively oriented and makes a lot of money. And most light workers, I'd say, are positively oriented. And they're really interested in making impact. But just because you make impact doesn't mean you need to choose between making impact and being in integrity. So, again, that's another outdated belief, right? That you need to choose between being in integrity or making money, right? Because that's just a big example of an outdated belief. Number 3, be willing to shift from the old matrix way of doing things into the new matrix. So what I mean by that is that, for instance, those individuals who like to keep bringing up the capitalist patriarchy and how we're like victimized by the capitalist patriarchy. First of all, if you're identifying as a victim, that's your first problem, okay? Because you don't need to be a victim to anything or anyone. And when you identify as a victim, you are actually outsourcing your power. So that's a huge problem, and that gets to be something that you reclaim. And that's something that I actually even did a reel on, how to reclaim your power and take ownership of your power, like an exercise on that in one of my reels. But when you are open to shifting from the old matrix way of doing things and into the new matrix, then all this old paradigm thinking of, we're kind of like suckered into the capitalist patriarchy, we're at the mercy of the capitalist patriarchy and all this other stuff. And then segueing into the new paradigm, which is, I take ownership of my money. I take ownership of my wealth. I too am ready to claim and create my wealth, and I'm ready to receive it, right? Jennifer's saying, and thank you, Beyond, for helping me to shatter that belief, life-changing. Yeah, Jennifer's done work with me, so I'm so super grateful. Thank you for sharing that, Jennifer. Well, it helps when you've got like kick-ass clients, okay? I'll just say that helps. So that's what can be an example for the old matrix way of doing things into the new matrix. I'll give you an example to make this a little more clear. So when I was like maybe it was a couple years ago now, I had a patient who was female, And she worked in corporate, and I understood where she was coming from because I came from corporate too, to a certain extent. But she would not allow herself to use her birth given name. It was always initials like JD, right? Like, so it's this ambiguous, like, is she male? Is she female? Like, I mean, not like that's important, but obviously it was important to her, right? Like she wanted to be ambiguous with that. And she even actually shared with me, um, when we were working together, like, yeah, it just makes things easier for me. She said, to just like say, call, I'll just call myself JD, and then like no one starts like creating assumptions about what the meeting is going to be like, or, that kind of thing. So, like, and to that end, she was so, you know, she was such an example of this number one example of the number one mistake light worker women make when it comes to creating their wealth, is that they don't allow themselves to receive. And because she was so used to being so super aggressive, that, and it wasn't something that she felt aligned with, but she did it so that she could succeed, right? And a lot of women did this, and myself included. Back in the day, I don't think I changed my name to make it more ambiguous, but I did follow some of that: push harder, aggression, make it happen, crush the competition, like all of that. Like I understand that. But that said, when it came to her, it became very much like she was so out of balance and so not connected with herself that she even had problems with like hearing anyone talking in the hallway, or hearing a floorboard creak. Like, she was set off. But that's how tightly wound she was from not allowing herself to be in the essence of who she is, and not be in this like full on aggression thing that she perceived was the way she was supposed to be, right? So that's an example of the old matrix way of thinking and doing things, right? In the new matrix way, it's about embracing your feminine way of creating wealth, which again does not mean you're passive and sitting around on the couch eating like burritos all day. I mean, you can definitely do that if you want, but I'm talking that feminine wealth and feminine power doesn't come from being passive. Being in your feminine power has its own level of power. It's not an in your face, like sometimes it can be, right? But most of the time it's about the flow, being in the flow, opening, trusting what you don't understand, trusting the mystery, allowing yourself to receive. And the receiving piece is huge, huge. And that might be even one of the number one things of like the old matrix is like, push hard, white knuckle your experience. It'll be uncomfortable. You're going to like be disconnected from your children and like for people you love. Like, it's just this like all or nothing experience, right? Versus the new matrix of, I get to spend time with my children. I get to spend time with my loved ones when I feel like it. I have the freedom to like travel. Like, maybe let's go traveling next week, right? Like, I mean, because I'd still serve my clients, because I'm, virtual, right? Because when you have a global business, that's what you're doing, right? It's this virtual experience you're providing to the world. But it's also this thing of like, I trust because I've got things in place, right? Because the divine feminine. Yes, Melinda. Melinda's saying ease and flow. Absolutely. When you are in the flow and in your divine feminine, and here's the other thing, being a divine feminine doesn't mean you're like hating the masculine, okay? That's not what that means. When you're truly in your divine feminine, you are valuing and creating the importance of the divine masculine. The divine masculine is all about the creating of structures, building a base, building a foundation, right? And you will not be in your divine feminine power if you are also not connected and receiving from the divine masculine. Okay, so I think you're understanding where I'm coming from with all this, right? Like, you get to be in the unification of this versus like man here, woman here, this bad, this good, and all this polarity that is part of the divisive tactics, right? That is going on now, right? Like, and it's showing up in all different kinds of ways, like, these people good, these people bad. Like, I mean, it's happening all over the world. I mean, that's why, you know, our collective is being so easily manipulated because they're believing all this crap about like the division. So the point being is that when you're really in your divine feminine, you are also embracing your divine masculine and the divine masculine, right? You're not just like, I am woman, hear me roar and fuck everyone else, right? Like, I mean, it is a unification of, you know, you create this together. That is the whole thing of creation, right? The divine masculine creates the structure, the foundation. The divine feminine brings in the essence and energizes and creates life out of it, right? And then together, you can't have one or the other without the other, right? You can't have creation without one aspect of that experience, right? So you can't just like be only in your divine feminine and that's it, right? Because then it wouldn't be a full creation. So I hope that's resonating. Reddy Moore is saying this lady is speaking facts. So glad you agree. And yes, this will be saved. It will be in the video section in Instagram and in Facebook. It'll be in the video section there too. So that was kind of it's like warm in here. That's why you see me like touching my brow. Okay. And also I can probably use some water. So that was just all about talking about shifting from the old matrix way of doing things to the new matrix, right? And you must also be willing to let go of what you've been taught will create your wealth so that you can be aligned with an easier way of creating it. So this is something that I share in probably almost every live I do where I talk about like money stories. So if you've heard this before, just bear with me. But like there's this story where, my father being successful as a Western physician, he was successful and he did very well for him and as a provider for our family. But one thing I noticed is that when he would pay bills, he'd be like, more money, more problems, more money, more problems, right? And so I then understood that if I have more money, I will have more problems. So I made sure to have as little money as possible so I wouldn't have more problems, which then resulted in all kinds of things, one of them including me, living in a roach-infested closet in New York City's Hell's Kitchen. And it was as hellish as it sounds, but that's what I was willing to do so that I wouldn't have more problems. Little did I know I was actually creating more problems for myself by doing that. But that said, that was a whole outdated way. This whole idea, my idea of creating wealth at that time was if you create wealth, it's going to give you more problems. It's going to be hard. It's going to make you grumpy. It's going to make you a mean person or, whatever. Like these were some of the things I was coming away with. And so I was like, oh my God, making money sounds hard. I don't want to make money. I kind of don't want to make money because I don't want any of that. I want to be happy. I want to like have time with people I love. I want to, I don't want to be so hard, right? So, I mean, a lot of light workers also have that old way of thinking of how wealth gets created, of this whole thing of like, you're going to work yourself to the bone. It's going to be hard. Money doesn't grow on trees. I don't know about you, but that was something I heard a lot too. And so, if money doesn't grow on trees, then maybe it's not easy, right? And then, my God, it's going to be really hard to make money, is the assumption. And so you get to realize that that is all what you've been taught about wealth. That doesn't mean it's true. Just because you've been taught it, what you've been taught was a belief. But beliefs are not facts, right? So you get to align yourself with your wealth from a place of, putting in that divine masculine structure of the foundation and then being in the feminine divine energy that allows yourself to receive the wealth as if it was nothing. I can't tell you how many times I was just like out enjoying myself or getting a massage or something. Then all of a sudden I get some alert that, a couple thousand came in, right? Or like a new client enrolled, right? And it's just like, that's how energy works. You must allow yourself to receive, because if you're like white knuckling your experience, you are still functioning from the old ways of creating wealth. And you will make a certain amount of wealth from that level of experience, but you will not go into the unlimitedness of wealth. And if you want to be in the unlimitedness of the new earth wealth, you must actually shift your perspective, and you must actually shift the paradigm within of what you've been taught is your reality. And that might blow up shit for you for a little bit, and just like be kind with yourself, be super loving with yourself. If you know, that just blows your mind and you're just like, oh my God. So does that mean that like, so that means like this person who took care of me or raised me, you know, like I just like inherited their outdated money beliefs, and it's not actually true. Like it actually could be easy. And making money gets to be easy. You know, creating your wealth gets to be easy. Um, and someone is sharing here, me too, my dad would say, when money comes in, money comes out. Yeah, so even that, right, even that comment is also, just as the other ones I gave you examples of, is also rooted in scarcity, right? Like there's never enough. That is one of the biggest lies ever. And that is something that a lot of light workers function from, of like, there's not enough. There's not enough for me. There's not enough love. There's not enough time, not enough money, not enough wealth, not enough. And that is called the scarcity programming. That's called the scarcity programming. And that is something that is being deployed because it is a weapon and it's not real, right? Because it's instigating your fears. It's instigating your survival. You know, your root chakra's like, oh my God, what's going on? You know, that's what the root chakra's doing when you're in the scarcity mindset. You're like, oh my God. And that's, but the reality is that that's not even true, right? That's not true, that because we actually live in an abundant universe, abundant. Even like, and scarcity is not the opposite of abundance. It too is abundance. It's the abundance of scarcity, right? So, I mean, we're still in abundance with everything. And I love what someone's sharing here. I always ask, why not? Why can't it grow on trees? Exactly. Why can't it grow on trees? You know, like, I mean, if you actually just look at it, if you were like, you know, growing a tree and maybe it happened to be a money tree, you know, and it's growing, then all of a sudden you're just like, you know, putting certain like systems in place, and then you just start opening yourself to receiving things. It's just like, it's really powerful. Alfie saying, I needed this, took notes and passing on to friends and asked them to check you out. Thank you so much, Alfie. I appreciate you. And it's good to see you too. So Hannah is sharing, my mom works 24/7 and comes home and acts miserable no matter where she's working. It made me my whole life feel that when I get my career, my happiness is over. Oh my God, that's powerful. Wow, that is super powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Hannah. That is just, that's deep, right? Like when I get career happiness, when I get my career, my happiness is over. So it's almost like saying, once I embody my purpose in this world, my happiness is over, right? That is deep. And so what I invite you to do, Hannah, and I invite this for anyone who just resonated with that statement, because I know she's not the only one, all right, is look into yourself and really check in with your heart and be like, is that really true? Is my happiness going to be over once I step into my Lightworker purpose and really embody that? Like, do I know that for a fact? Like, let's put it that way. Do I know for a fact that is true? That my happiness will definitely be 100% over once I open into my career or embrace my purpose? Do I know that for a fact? And if you are connected with your heart, most likely you will get an answer of, no, that is not true. That's not true for a fact, but that's how I feel, right? But just because you have an emotion does not mean it is reality. It is an emotion, and emotions change. Excuse me. So I hope that is helpful. Someone's sharing that they do have a money tree and that they water with affirmations daily. Awesome. Yes. Cultivate it and prune, water and feed it your money tree. Yes. So another thing you want to do is be willing to be supported at high levels in order to create what you want with your wealth. And so what I mean by that is like coming back to the story when I used to lone wolf my life. I was just like, no, I'm good. I got it. I'm set. I'm fine. I can do it. I can do it all. I can do all the admin. I can do all the scheduling. I can do all the courses. I can do all the structures. I can set up the money stuff. I can set up the forms of payment. I can do this and that. Speaking as a spiritually conscious entrepreneur, right? When you are a light worker showing up in service, you are putting things into place, right? Just because you can do everything doesn't mean you should do everything. Please, please do not make the same mistake I did, because I learned the hard way that just because you can do everything does not mean that you should do everything. Because what happens then is that then your energy becomes scattered. Okay, and as speaking light worker to light worker, understand this: your energy will get scattered. And when your energy gets scattered, you are not focusing it where it needs to go. And where you should be focusing on is you being the visionary that you are. Not like all the admin and the little things that are just like, okay, wait a minute, I was like creating my course and now I gotta like answer all these emails, right? Like that's why I'm always like, if you're even just getting an assistant, just like get an assistant like part-time for like 5 hours a week, okay? And before anyone even comes to me with like, I can't afford that, you can't afford not to, all right? Because that's the truth. I've been in this for a while. I've been around the corner, and trust me, it will grow you. And the other thing too is that I invested in a high-level coach, and I still do, right? And it's always at a level of investment that can be challenging, where I'm like, oh, okay, that's a new level of wealth creation I get to experience, and I get to create, and I get to embody. So, notice there, I could have easily gone into victimhood. I could have been like, oh my God, why me? Why is this happening? I can't do this. I knew I couldn't do this. Why did I even bother? Right? Like that's the victim mentality. The one who is the empowered light worker, who's a new earth leader, they just figure the shit out. Like, okay, so that's a lot more than I've done before. And I also know it's a line, so therefore it's going to be happening. And I already know that. I trust that. So how can I figure this out? What do I need to do? What gets to happen? How can I make this happen? And not from a place of like white knuckling your life, right? But like, how do I get to apply myself? How do I get to show up as that level, that version of me who's already accomplished what I'm currently setting out to do? Because that's really what it is. You get to consult your future self around this. And I won't get too deep into this because it's like a whole ass exercise, and it's something that I share with my clients and I help lead them through. But it's like consult with your future self, right? She's done this stuff already. She's like over and done it. She's already like over there enjoying her yacht, whatever she's doing, right? And you are now in the process of embracing that and embodying that. And so you get to be like, who do I get to be to make this happen? Knowing one of my coaches says this: your success is inevitable, right? And so since my success is inevitable, what would be my next step? What would be my next step here? If I knew that without a shadow of a doubt, my success in this world is just literally a matter of time. So it's all about your reframe. It's about your approach. It goes beyond positive affirmations, right? It's about shifting your consciousness. And then the last tip I'll give you about how to transform this is embrace your receiving, embrace the money, embrace the love. And one good way to say that is, and I say this once in a while just because it sounds nice, right? Or it feels good. And I might just be like, I embrace all forms of God's love. I embrace all forms of love today. No matter what goes on today, no matter what happens, I am embracing love in all forms. And all forms of God's love that is coming my way, I embrace. I receive. I don't even know what it is. I don't know how it's going to look like. It may not even look like what I want it to look like. But that's what surrender is about, folks. You are not saying, I am open to receiving as long as it looks like this, right? If you are like that, then it's a conditional receiving, and you need to be unconditional with your receiving, right? Melinda's saying, I love this framing. Yes. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. And so if you're just joining us now, today's topic is the number one mistake Lightworker women make when it comes to creating their wealth. I went into why Lightworker women are being invited to embrace their wealth right now. Also, what that number one mistake Lightworker women make when it comes to creating their wealth. And then how to transform that so that you can be in your abundant wealth and as a result, make greater impact. Because really, it's one and the same. If you don't embrace your wealth, you will not make greater impact. That's just the way it works. Because the level of energy you get to shift, the paradigm that you shift within yourself in order to make huge impact will also create huge wealth for you. But that doesn't happen until you just literally like upheave your way of thinking, everything you've been taught, and then you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe I believed all that. And then, of course, again, practice deep compassion, much, much love, right? And then embrace what's really here for you, right? Which is, okay, so I get to embrace all of this beautiful power, this love that I get to receive into my heart. Yes, I receive, and it might even be in those micro moments of like, instead of being like, oh my God, that person is so annoying, like, okay, where can I receive? where can I shift at this moment? And and that's why they call it work. If it was just about sitting on the couch and eating Doritos all day, it would not be called work. But that's why it's called work, because it's this shift that comes from a conscious, intentional place. So I shared that with you. I'm open to taking a few questions at this moment. And thank you for staying for, these juicy lives tend to be super juicy. As you put in any questions or observations about this topic, I'm going to share with you, if you haven't heard yet, I'm inviting you to a very special masterclass on this topic of creating wealth. And I know many of you already signed up because we have like almost 500 people who have already registered for this webinar. That said, I know that there are a lot of people who are like, they're like, I hope I can make it. I'm coming from Australia, or that kind of thing. And I'm just, that's so awesome. So if you've already signed up for this masterclass where I go deeper into this, the masterclass is entitled Creating Wealth in the New Earth. Activate your power, release all limits, and be the new earth leader you are meant to be. So in this masterclass, I will be giving you training on all those levels. I'm also going to be going a little bit more in depth about my journey and the things that I got to level up into to play a big game. Because if you are here to be a new earth leader, you're actually leading the energy, right? You're actually leading the frequency on this planet with light. With light. And that means you play a big game, right? And so I'm going to teach you like what that looks like, how you can open up into that. And so if you are here on Instagram, I'll mention Facebook in a moment, but on Instagram, just go to the link in my bio. I think it's the second link down to register for the Creating Wealth in the New Earth Masterclass. It's going to be this Wednesday, the 18th at 12 p.m. US Eastern Time. And for those of you who have been inspired, with all this, what we've been talking about creating wealth, I'm going to go more deeper into it. And I'll also be answering some questions at the end as well. But it's going to be a lot more detailed. I'm also going to be performing a full-on activation for you midway. So, come with your bells on, okay, because I'm bringing it. And so if you want to join us on Instagram, click the link in my bio, and in Facebook, I'm going to put the copy and paste here so that it's easy for you to reference. Okay. All right, so it's there in Facebook too. So now I'm going to check it out. Also, I wanted to let you know, because I'm getting a lot of questions on this. If you can't be here like live at the masterclass, because I'm getting questions about if there's a replay, there will be a 48-hour replay. But if you wanted to have just lifetime access, you can access it whenever you want. You can even play the activation as many times as you feel like it, because you will always receive more, even if you've already listened to it once. And energy is energy. You don't have to be live in order to feel the effects, right? And you can get the Wealth Creators ticket if you want to have that upgrade and you want to have lifetime access to the masterclass training, as well as access to the recording of another bonus masterclass training that I provided that I haven't shared elsewhere. And so that's a special ticket if you want to upgrade for that. So that said, let's go to some questions here or comments. Okay, ready more. It says, clear, concise, and delivered with compassion and zeal. Everyone should support this being. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And really honestly, when people resonate, it's because they're ready, right? If any of this that I've been talking about, you've been resonating with, it's because you're ready. And I'm not going to get into what that ready means. You know what that means for yourself. So you just know. When you know, you know. If you don't, you don't too. And that's also fine. Okay. I'm so glad folks are saying needed this. I'm so glad it's helpful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Drika's sharing that. I'm so glad you're going to be there. That's awesome. Okay. So I'm going to make sure that we're only talking about the topic at hand, right? Just so that it's useful to everyone here. And the topic being the number one mistake Lightworker women make when it comes to creating their wealth. So the questions should be really more concerned about, really creating your wealth, and even creating your wealth as a Lightworker woman. So looking for those comments and questions. Your energy is so calming. It's like I'm meditating. Awesome. Okay, that's great. All right. And Heidi, sharing your message spoke to me. Thank you for this beautiful reminder. So I'm so glad that this is really resonating for folks. And I'm so glad this is landing for you. I don't see any questions per se, more like observations, which is also cool. But I think what I'm going to do, well, this question might be somewhat connected. What does losing clients right now mean? So that's a pretty vague question, because the reality is that that could be for a number of reasons, right? But it is connected to this topic about wealth. So what I will say about that, losing clients right now, it could be different factors. It could be the way you're showing up or not showing up. It could be maybe you're entering into a new place in your path, and people are not resonating with it, or you're not clear with it. Usually well, also you mentioned losing clients versus getting clients. So specifically around losing clients, meaning that it sounds like if you had clients and then you're losing them. Well, again, that depends, because that's super vague, because that could be for a number of reasons. So I can't really say for sure without hearing some details. And again, just reminding you that the topic at hand is on creating wealth. Okay. Okay, so with the clarity of clients are just not calling or booking. Okay, so I wouldn't say that you're losing clients, because it doesn't look like they're clients already yet. It's more like maybe you're not landing with your clients, like either they're not calling or they're not booking. So you might want to check actually your messaging on that, because this is connected to wealth, because as you know, everything's connected, right? So it probably has something to do with your messaging, because if no one's actually booking calls at all, like you're getting zero, zilch, nada, then there might be some room to zhuzh up your messaging. And that's something that I cover with my clients, really. It's because if you don't know who you're serving, then whatever you say is going to be confusing. And then thus, you're not going to reach your ideal clients because they won't even know what you can do for them, right? So I hope that provided some clarity, because I know that's kind of like connected to wealth and also more around messaging and visibility. Okay. Sorry. Hopefully, just got an alarm that just went off. But so that looks to be it. So thank you for your observations and for your questions and for being here. And okay, seeing some comments in here. Okay, I feel so ready, but customers won't come for doing their shadow work. I surrender towards the universe, get highly guided, but somehow they are not coming. Is the masterclass also going to give insight about that? Well, the masterclass is going to be about, it's going to be centered on creating your wealth. It's not going to be going into the details of why clients are not coming in, right? That's not the purpose of that masterclass. And so if it's about, they're not stepping in, they don't want to do their shadow work, then, it sounds like it might be more of a messaging thing, right? Like it's not landing for them somehow. And usually if your messaging is not landing, it's because you don't know who you're serving. And you must, it's imperative, it's vital to know who you're serving, who your ideal client is before you do any messaging. Otherwise, everyone gets confused. They don't know what you stand for. You don't know what you stand for, and your messages sound confusing. And what happens when people are confused? They don't step forward. And that's just human nature, right? All right. So, all right, here's, I'm going to take this last question. Heidi from Facebook is sharing, I came out of a rocky marriage. I haven't recovered my confidence or financial independence yet. I feel stuck in my housewife submissive role of my marriage. How do I get my spark back? Well, first of all, just to put it out there, this is specifically for light workers, right? And light worker women who are showing up to be light workers in the world, right? Versus just general, advice for people, right? That said, assuming that this person is a light worker who is dedicated to being in service, this is where you get to start doing that work, to start shifting and unplugging out of the old matrix and into the new one. Because this whole thing about being a submissive housewife, that is part of the old paradigm. So if you're still believing that, that's where you get to start. You get to shift out of making that your belief system into believing something that's more empowering for you. And I can't tell you what that is because, I don't know you, you're not my client, but what I can say is that that's something you get to discover for yourself. So, all right. Well, I hope to see you there at the masterclass on Wednesday, the 18th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be 1.5 hours. There will be a 48-hour replay. I do recommend you show up live just because then I can answer your questions. And this is all about creating wealth in the new earth for those light workers who are really ready to graduate from being a light worker to stepping up as a leader of the new earth. I look forward to seeing you there. And make sure you check out the link and register. It's free. All right. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Much love, light, and power to you.